Hi people, how you all doing? So, in my last video with this car, you will notice that it was clicking quite a lot, which with these cars it makes that noise when the spur gear is slipping, which that's what I thought the problem was. But it turns out it wasn't that. So I'm going to show you guys what I did. I bought out the manual online, the online manual. So I'll be able to show you the things that I did to try and fix it that didn't work, and then I will tell you how I fixed it, and I'll also tell you how I sorted out the differentials too. So initially I thought that the slipper clutch was slipping, which is, if I get the, is this part here. Obviously, to those of you who got one of these cars, you know that this slipper clutch slips and it makes that zzz noise. Because that's what I thought was happening. I thought this was slipping inside this. So I put some spacers, like some washers here where this one is, to put the C-clip on. I put it back together, still clicking. That didn't work, so I thought it was something else. I thought it might be the pinion gear that goes to the differential. So I shimmed this one, the back one, which would be the back one. I shimmed that, put it back together, still clicking. I shimmed the front one, put it back together, still clicking. So I wiped that out. I took the shims out, put it back together, and then thought it might be the differentials. So if I bring out the page a little bit. So here's the diff. It's a bit like the K989 differential. It's pretty much similar to that diff. There's not really much difference. Although they are different, they're not the same. So initially I thought maybe these gears were slipping, the inside gears. You got your planetary gears, and then I can't remember the name for these gears, but spider gears, is it? Anyway, I thought these might be slipping, although the differentials were quite open, and they are on these cars. They're fully open, but I'll tell you a little way you can lock these up without locking them up. Anyway, I'll get to that at the end. So I took both diffs apart, looked at the gears, they were all fine, put them back together, put it back in. Still couldn't figure it out, it was still clicking. So after that, I decided to take the spur gear off and change it. Although I don't think it was absolutely necessary, because once I started doing this, I found out what the problem was. And it was this C-clip. So when you push all this together and the C-clip sits in this little groove right here, the C-clip was always sitting on an angle. So the spring would push it onto an angle. It wouldn't sit in that groove flat. So what was happening was, because it was pushing like that, it was pushing against the back of the car. So when it gets to that high spot, it would push the back of the car out. So what I've done, instead of having the spacers on this side, I put the clip on, put the spacers on, I put 2, and then put this little tiny, this is like a brass washer that goes right on the end. So I put that little brass washer on the end. So I put this on, I put this on, I put 2 spacers like this on with that brass washer, put it back together, and I can tell you now, this car doesn't click. And I'll do a video, I'll bring them both back out, and I'll bring them back out and run them, and you will notice that it's not clicking. So if you got one of these cars and it keeps clicking, and you think it's the slipper clutch, and say you do what I do and you've changed it and it's still slipping, it won't be this or that, it will be this where it's not sitting straight. So just put two little washers on this, on the other side, not on this side, on this side after that. So put this on, put that on, put the 2 washers, then put this on. Put your car back together, and that should stop it from happening, because like I said, the E-clip was sitting like that, so when it spins and it gets to that high point at the top, it'll push the back end out, which then would cause the pinion gear on the back to slip. It took me ages to figure out what was going on with that, guys. I started working on this car at 11 o'clock at night. By the time I tried these shims and tried all this stuff with the differentials, taking them apart and looking at them, putting the car back together, yeah, I did that till about 4:45 in the morning. And like I said, it was about 4 o'clock when I started to go and change this, and then that's when I noticed this E-clip wasn't sitting straight, and that was what was causing the problem. So yeah, just put 2 spacers on this side, put your little brass washer back on, put the car back together, and that will solve it. Another good thing with, well, it's not good, but another little tip for you guys. If you got one of these cars and it doesn't really sit straight, or the suspension seems a bit more wonkier than the other side, what you want to do is you want to take the body off. I probably should have done this to show you, really. You might see it, but if you push down on this back end, you see the front wheel kind of lift. And then if I do the other side, you see? And it lifts higher on that side. But what you want to do, you want to try and balance out all your suspension a bit better. That will also help with the handling. And then the other thing, what you will notice in the video the last time I ran this, is that it would donut to the left, but it wouldn't do it to the right. And that is because the differentials are too open. They're just way too open. So, as you know, this differential isn't sealed. You can't put silicone oil in it. So if you do, it's just going to leak out. Yeah, you can put grease in it if you've got something that's relatively thick. Excuse me a second, guys. Which I don't have. All the oil I have, all the grease I have, usually just turns to like liquid mush, and it's pretty pointless. So when you put it in here, it's alright for a couple of days, then after that it's just shit. So when I did the diffs in my Sen, I had this stuff that's like, it's like putty. It's almost like blue tack, but it's white. I ran out of that stuff ages ago, and I wanted to make something for the diff to put in these diffs, so it would allow me to spin the car out. Obviously, to add a bit of resistance into the differential. And I'm not gonna lie, guys, I did actually use some of this blue tack. So what I did was, I also used a bit of differential oil, like the diff oil. So I put a little bit of that diff oil into the differential itself, just so it sits in like, just sits in here, like leave the gears in, put some in. Get yourself a little bit of blue tack like this. Obviously you don't want to put too much in there, because you put too much in there, it's going to block the diff up. So what I did was, I literally squeezed it to make it like really, really paper thin. Like to the point I'm actually smudging it out. And then just take pieces of that, like that. You see that? Make sure you put, if you want to use this trick, make sure you put some differential oil in. Then just use a couple of little pieces like this. Put them in with the diff oil, pop your differential together, mix the gears up, and it would turn this into like a chewing gum kind of paste. And yeah, that's how I did the differentials. See, when I did the diffs in this car, I had some of that diff putty, so that's what I've used in this car. I've used like that diff putty, but you can make your own diff putty out of a little bit of blue tack and some differential oil. Like I said, put some diff oil in, get yourself some little pieces of this, do if you're using a car like this, just use little bits. Just put a couple of little bits in. Put your diff back together. Give it a twist around. Get this in all of the gears. When you're happy with the tightness of the diff, put your diff back together, i.e. screwing the screws in. If you screw them in and it's too tight, back your screws out a little bit. But don't put too much in the differential. You only need little bits. Like bare minimal. I put that little bit I just showed you in the rear diff. I probably put 2 or 3 like that. So like they're no bigger than that, guys. Like that. That in there with a bit of diff oil all mixed in, it'll turn it into like a chewing gum pasty. And yeah, that'll work in your diff, guys. Like I said, don't overdo it with the blue tack. Otherwise you just end up locking the diff. So I can just show you. So if I spin this wheel now, it should spin the front wheels too, see? See how I spin in the front ones? But this differential isn't locked, guys. I don't know how I'm going to show you this time. If I can hold these and spin right, there you go, see? That diff is actually spinning. The front wheels I'm blocking with my hand. See? So now you see that it's turning. So it's not actually fully locked, guys. It's just like stiffened up in there, so it's not as free. Because otherwise this will just spin. So when you go to do a donut, either way, say, I don't know, yours don't do it to the left, that would be the reason why, because your differential is open. So when you're trying to do it this way, the diff is spinning so fast on the other side that it's trying to catch up. So what you'll find is you do a half a donut and then it's like the car wants to catch grip and take off. So when that happens, it's because the differential on the other side is spinning so fast to keep up with this side that your car's like trying to catch grip and take off. So yeah, to solve that from happening, just do what I just said with the blue tack and your differentials. When I show you this video with this running, it will run now exactly how that one was running in the video. So how this one was running, this car will now run the same way. But yeah, that's how I did it. That's what was causing the problem. If you got one of these cars and you got the same problem with the click-in and it's not your spur gear, I can guarantee you it's probably because this E-clip is sitting on an angle. So just put 2 spacers inside this brass spacer, put your car back together, and yeah, it should solve the clicking. And like I said, with the differentials, if your car down that one way but not the other, I can guarantee it's because you need to put some kind of stuff in your differentials. It's up to you if you want to use some thicker grease, like a marine grease. If you've got some of that, use some of that. Obviously you can't put diff fluid into it because it's just going to come out. So you need like some kind of paste. Or maybe, it might even be called differential putty, I'm not sure. But that was what I used in my Sen car, and the little bit that I had left, I put into this car. That's why this car drifts and slides the way it does, because I put that stuff in the differential. And you can make it, like I just said to you, with the blue tack if you want to, guys. Just make sure you add a bit of that differential fluid in there to mix it into kind of like a paste. But I hope that helps anyway. And on that note, guys, please like and subscribe, leave any comments, and I'll see you next time.